After the defeat of Napoleon in France, Britain, Prussia, Russia, and Austria, the Quadruple Alliance, met at the Congress of Vienna in 1814 to form a lasting peace. They were lenient with France's terms, restoring the Bourbon dynasty and letting them keep the territory they had before the Napoleonic Wars, but also building defenses in order to keep peace and balance. Austria's Metternich, Great Britain's Castlereagh, and France's Talleyrand set up a balance of power to ensure that no country was too powerful. This idea of the balance of power helped restore and maintain peace. The Quadruple Alliance also agreed to meet periodically, creating Europe's Congress system in order to settle future problems. After peace treaties were finalized, some powers worked to keep peace in their own countries. Led by Metternich from Austria, a strong conservative, along with Russia and Prussia, the Holy Alliance was formed in 1815 in order to crush liberal and revolutionary movements in Europe. Liberalism was not a new concept and was the foundation for both the French and American revolutions. However, with war over, liberalism began to become popular again. Revolutions in Spain and the Italian Kingdom of Two Sicilies arose in 1820. Metternich and Alexander I of Russia stopped both uprisings. They had begun a war against liberalism, and the suppressing of these two revolutions was just the beginning. Metternich was quite effective in Europe, and in 1819 issued the Carlsbad Decrees, which set restrictions on radical groups in the 38 German states and established a committee of spies and informers to investigate and punish liberal and radical organizations. Liberalism, however, would not be stopped by Austria and Russia. It had already formed ideas such as freedom of speech and fair trials, but now it added laissez-faire economics to the list, which stressed no government interference in economics. This theory of free market economy was presented by Adam Smith in his book Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations. The ideas of liberalism were also present in politics, creating a demand for new concepts, such as all-male suffrage. Nationalism was one of the new radical ideas originating from the French Revolution and Napoleonic Wars. Nationalism stressed that people had cultural unity, stemming from common language, history, and territory. It was intended to give people pride in their country, where before there were often many different ethnic groups and languages in one nation. At first, it was an ideal. People and countries were just too different for a single nationality. Later, nationalism was used greatly in politics. Nationalists felt connected to and responsible for their nation, creating a community and a certain mentality. Early nationalists were often very liberal and democratic, but as nationalism evolved, it became a normal practice even for conservative politicians. On the rise was another liberal idea, socialism. Beginning in France, socialists attempted to bring about a perfect society. Early socialists were often referred to as utopians, after Thomas More's great book. Socialists felt that greed was the cause of most problems in society. Planning, greater economic equality, and state regulation of property were all key socialist ideas. Count Henry de Saint-Simon believes that parasites, the court aristocracy, lawyers, and churchmen, should be replaced by doers, the leading scientists, engineers, and industrialists. He also thought that people should focus on helping the poor. Charles Fourier, another socialist, carefully calculated a perfect, self-sufficient society containing exactly 1,620 people. He stressed the emancipation of women and abolition of marriage. Louis Blanc wrote Organization of Work, which urged workers to fight for the right to vote and the right to work, the idea that the government should give them a job. Pierre-Joseph Proudhon wrote, What is property? And believed property was the rich stealing from the workers. However, unlike other socialists, Proudhon believed that power should not rest in the government. He was known as an anarchist. Then Karl Marx stepped onto the scene. He is the founder of a form of socialism often known as Marxism or communism. He and Friedrich Engels wrote the Communist Manifesto, which became the Bible of Marxism. Marx believed that the middle class and working class were fighting in a class struggle, as the middle class always exploited the lower, and a violent revolution was bound to occur. He believed the working class, the proletariat, would overcome the middle-class bourgeoisie, as the bourgeoisie had previously done to the aristocrats. Marx used David Ricardo's idea that labor was the source of value and profit was wages stolen from the workers. He also built on Georg Hegel's belief that each age has a dominant set of ideas, which produces opposing ideas and eventually creates a new synthesis. For example, after man created the idea of being, they created the idea of non-being, which synthesized into the idea of becoming, and thus each era was based on a new idea. Marx applied this to economics, showing that each lower class would rise against its oppressors. The Romantic movement, appearing around 1750 but reaching maturity in the early 19th century, changed art much as liberalism changed politics. It was a blatant revolt against classicism and the Enlightenment. Instead of following rules, rationality, and order, it stressed emotions, imagination, and spontaneity. Romantics applied their ideas to art, literature, and even their everyday lives. Many liked to create images of the better lives people used to have in the Middle Ages. They loved drama, which meant that many committed suicide, fought in duels, and sometimes even went mad. In Romantic literature, which was particularly strong in Britain, the most famous writer was William Wordsworth. Some other noteworthy names are Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Walter Scott, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, Germaine de Stael, Victor Hugo, Dupin, Pushkin, and the Grimm brothers. They were Additionally, Romanticism carried into art and music. One of the greatest painters was Eugène Delacroix from France, who used his art to paint exotic scenes, but he also stressed freedom. In his famous painting, Massacre at Kairos, he portrays the oppression of Greeks in a negative light. England's Joseph M. W. Turner and John Constable were both painters of nature, although they had their own styles, dark and light, respectively. However, Romanticism was most fully realized in music, as it abandoned the classical style and became more nuanced and expressive. It started to become its own form of entertainment. Many of the most famous musicians of all time were part of the Romantic movement, including Chopin, pianist Franz Liszt, and Ludwig van Beethoven.